Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex here. Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be looking ahead to the Bahrain Grand Prix, the second race of the F1 2019 season. And well, the Australian Grand Prix may not have provided the most amount of overtakes in the world, but looking forward to Bahrain, we should be excited because Bahrain is a track where inherently there are going to be more overtakes, which should provide more juicy action, which is great for us Formula 1 fans. So what do you guys think? It's going to be an interesting one in my opinion, but I'm going to run through 5 things I think I'm going to be looking out for in this Bahrain Grand Prix, and then I'm going to run through my top 10 finishing order for this one. So let me know if you agree with that later on, and of course leave your top 10 in the comment section down below, and also let me know your ranking of the top 3 teams. That'd be interesting to hear in that comment section. So my first pointer is, can Ferrari regain their speed? So we saw in Australia they were sort of 6 or 7 tenths of a second behind Mercedes, similar to what they were in the 2018 season, but I don't know whether it's me just being a bit pessimistic, but I don't really feel they're as close as they were in the 2018 season. They just feel a bit more distant. Yes, they won the 2018 Australian Grand Prix through a bit of luck, but in 2019 they were just sort of nowhere. I don't think they were ever going to contend with a victory in 2019, even with some safety car things going their way. So I'm a little bit worried for Ferrari right now. I don't know whether they will quite have the speed to go for a victory and even a championship this year. And Sebastian Vettel must be slightly losing his patience within this team, because he's been with them now for a number of seasons. It was 2015 that he took over Fernando Alonso's seat at Ferrari, and I'm thinking he might be thinking about maybe possibly moving on if this year doesn't work out for him, and then where would he go? So maybe that's something to think about, but we're thinking about too far in the future there. But as for 2019, I think Ferrari, they're going to struggle for a couple of races in my opinion. I mean, I just can't see them somehow getting back onto the top step of the podium in the Bahrain Grand Prix. I just don't think it's going to happen. If they do, fair play. They're going to destroy a lot of people's opinions on this one, because I think maybe a lot of people agree with me on this one, that Ferrari do seem somewhat further away than they were in 2018, and of course they had some good results around this time of year. I mean, the first half of the season last year they scored a lot of points, and of course were the championship leaders for the majority of it. So I'm a little bit sceptical whether Ferrari can go for a victory here in Bahrain. I'm not going to say they are, but at the same time I think that, you know, something like a safety car or something crazy happening with the top 2 cars, top 2 or 3 cars, could lead them to getting a victory. So it won't count it out, but in my opinion I don't think we'll see Ferrari on the top step of the podium in Bahrain. My second pointer is, will Mercedes continue to dominate? Well, maybe dominate's a strong word, because okay, they had a good victory in Australia with Valtteri Bottas, but even with Hamilton having issues, he wasn't that far ahead of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull with their first race with the Honda Power Unit, getting them on the podium for the first time in I think 10 plus years. So that's great for Honda to get onto the podium. Great stuff for them. But will Mercedes be the team to beat in Bahrain? Well, I'm skeptical on this one once again. I don't know what to say here, because I personally feel they're going to this one being the team to beat. Well, obviously they are, because they won the last race, but I think that theoretically, if everything went to plan, I think Mercedes should win this race. But it's Formula 1, it doesn't typically go that way. It doesn't typically end up with a boring race from start to finish. Something normally happens, even if it's in the midfield. It can still affect the front-running cars with something like a safety car. So I think Mercedes are not going to dominate this Bahrain Grand Prix. I think there will be more pressure from especially Red Bull, but also Ferrari as well. I think they will be closer, but I just don't think they'll quite go for that victory here in Bahrain. But Mercedes, they are of course the team to beat. Silly I didn't say that earlier, but of course they're the team to beat from winning in Australia. But I think going to this one, they've got to look over their shoulders a little bit, because in the next couple of races, I don't think they're going to be pulling out an advantage, like going over a second ahead of anyone else. I think they're going to be reeled in, especially by Red Bull, because Red Bull seem to be the masters of developing over a season. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see. And that kind of leads on to my next point, actually, which is, do Red Bull have a chance? And in my opinion, the Bahrain Grand Prix is a much better chance of them going for a victory. So that's my personal opinion, of course. It could be completely wrong, but I think that Red Bull have a very strong chance here in Bahrain of possibly going for a victory. Now, that'll be really, really interesting for the championship. If Max Verstappen can bang in some results early on in this season, genuinely he could be in championship contention even if the car isn't quite there yet, because in my opinion Red Bull normally comes to the fore by the end of the season. They're normally battling for victories by the end of the year, as proved in 2018, even though by the start of 2018 they were just nowhere really in comparison to the top guys. By the end of the year they were pretty much on them. So very, very interesting to see this one. Is Bahrain going to be a track that leads itself to the Red Bull characteristics? Of course, we know that it's a good chassis. We know that the Honda power unit probably still isn't quite of that of Mercedes and Ferrari, but still it's close, much closer than it was in the previous couple of years with Renault. So I think Red Bull genuinely have a chance of winning this race. Now, I'll talk about my top 10 in a minute, but I think we've got to watch out for Red Bull in this one. I do genuinely think they will be battling with the Mercedes and maybe the Ferraris for the race victory here to this weekend. So I think you guys should be watching out for them. I think the Red Bull will be probably better than they were in Australia. I think that Australia has always been a bit of a struggle for the Red Bull cars. I remember correctly, they haven't really ever had amazing results. They're okay, a couple of victories, but they haven't really dominated like they have on certain tracks throughout the year. So I think Bahrain, I think it's going to be a good one for them, but, you know, maybe that's just wishful thinking, I don't know. Next up, my next point is who's going to be the best of the midfield drivers? So, or midfield teams, I suppose you can say, really, because the midfield was absolutely incredible in Australia, and that was where the intense battles were lying. So we had Magnussen in a Haas in 6th, Hulkenberg in a Renault in 7th, Raikkonen in a Alfa Romeo, not a Sauber, in 8th, Lance Stroll on a Racing Point in 9th, Pierre Gasly and Kvyat the other way around in 11th and 12th, both in the Red Bull and the Toro Rosso. Then you had Landon Norris just behind him. So, I mean, that's a great midfield. You've got the Haas, the Renault, the Alfa Romeo, the Racing Point, the Toro Rosso, probably not the Red Bull, and then also you've got the McLaren. So that's 6, pretty much all of the 6 midfield runners battling it out for best of the rest, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Now, because of the characteristics of Australia, it meant it was kind of a procession behind Magnussen for the majority of the last 15 laps. They couldn't really get past him. They couldn't really get close enough to go for an overtake. And it was my man Danny Kvyat who was trying to pull the overtakes, and unfortunately didn't end too well. He ended up in the gravel. But at least he went for it. At least he tried to do an overtake on Lance Stroll. In my opinion, looking back at it, he was way too far back to make the overtake. But I'm happy that Kvyat is coming into 2019 with a bold mindset, going for stuff like that. And it's not like dangerous. It's calculated, but that one maybe was just a bit too late on the brakes. But still, it's great to see the midfield battle as it is. Of course, I don't think Pierre Gasly is going to be in this midfield battle. I don't think he's going to match Max Verstappen throughout the majority of this season, but I can see him at least being top 6 in the majority of the races, so we probably won't have to worry about him in the midfield. But yeah, as you said, those 6 teams all battling it out for best of the rest is going to be very, very interesting. So Haas came out on top in Australia. I think it's interesting to note that Renault were definitely better in race trim than they were in qualifying, which I don't know whether that was an issue in qualifying that caused that, or whether it was just they just had better race pace. I don't really know, but it's interesting to note that. Kimi Raikkonen also had obviously a strong race in Australia, and Lance Stroll in the Racing Point. I think the Racing Point is another one, like the Renault, better in the race, so that's going to be something we should be watching out for in this one. So, in my opinion, I think that Renault will end up as best of the rest. I don't know whether they're quite there just yet. Haas, they always surprise us. I mean, they've surprised me once again. How have they managed to go and stay the best of the rest once again for like the 3rd year in a row now? They just keep coming back and they keep delivering in Australia in terms of race pace. Of course, it doesn't always go their wheel was on my mind. It doesn't always go their way in the pit stops with the wheels. So we'll see what happens in the future. Just fingers crossed for Haas they don't have any more of those issues, because obviously that's quite embarrassing for them, and I just don't wish that upon anyone. It's very, very tough for them already, and then to have those sort of issues is very, very horrible on them. So I think the midfield battle is going to be the one to watch once again. I hope that we have a close battle for the victory, but I think that battle for 7th position or whatever is the best of the rest position, if a couple of the top guys retire, that's going to be the one you want to watch out for in this race. It's going to be very, very exciting, and I'll read through my top 10 in a minute, because once again I think it's going to be very, very close. So my last one of my top 5 pointers to watch out for in the Bahrain Grand Prix is Williams. Well, as a British Formula 1 fan, it is very tough to see a team that has had so much success in their past struggle so much over the past couple of seasons. They had a podium just a couple of seasons ago in Baku in 2017 with Lance Stroll, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be a characteristic of Williams' seasons over the next couple of years, because this seems like a long-term problem. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I'm kind of feeling Williams' pain, because they have two quality drivers. Of course, we've all spoken about Robert Kubica and what is going on with him, but nonetheless, they're both two very talented drivers that in their own right deserve to be in Formula 1. And whatever they do, if they pull out the best lap in the history of Formula 1, the best they're going to get is 19th. That's how bad their car is this year. It's kind of like we've got a very, very competitive top three teams, insanely competitive midfield, and then you've got one team at the back of the grid, sort of HRT speeds behind the rest of the field. It's very, very sad for Williams to be this far off the pace, and I worry for them. I just hope that their sponsors stay with them for the rest of this season. There's definitely a big rebuilding job to go out throughout the majority of this year and going forward. I think George Russell has already said this early on into the season he doesn't expect to be anywhere near the points for the first half of the year. They have an inherent problem with their car, which they're not going to solve until after the summer break, which is just gut-wrenching, especially for someone who really likes George Russell. I'm a big fan of his. I really want him to do well in Formula 1, and to see him stuck in this car that's just not going to be able to compete with anyone, probably not even his teammate, because he's that far ahead of him, it's going to be very, very tough as a George Russell fan this year. I mean, it's I don't know what to say. It's just going to be a struggle. It's going to be a struggle. But then again, I'm used to supporting the underdog. I supported Adrian Sutil for X many years, so many years. It was this time sort of Force India Spiker, and then obviously his last season at Sauber. None of them were particularly good, so I know how to deal with the struggles and the ups and downs, and maybe even more prominent with my my supporting of Danny Kvyat. It just, I don't seem to support the drivers that have the easiest time in Formula 1, do I? They always seem to have a bit of an issue here and there, but nonetheless, George Russell, in my opinion, in the future is going to be Formula 1 championship winning potential, or he's going to be good enough to be a championship winner, in my opinion. I think nothing against Esteban Ocon. I think George Russell is better than Esteban Ocon, and possibly in the same car maybe next year. I don't know. We'll see. That could be a really exciting battle. But George Russell is an incredible talent, and I think people don't quite appreciate that. We saw what Landon Norris did on his debut in a McLaren, getting into the top 10. Think that George Russell was way ahead of him in Formula 2, both rookies to that car. I think it's very exciting to see what these two do over the next couple of years. So, yeah, keep an eye out for George Russell. See what he does over the next couple of races. See how much ahead he is of Robert Kubica, because that could be something that you get surprised about. Let's just say that. But Williams as a whole, very, very tough for them. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm just wishing them the best, and I don't want this tough patch in their history to continue for much longer, but it looks like it's going to last for at least half of this season, which is tough. Nonetheless, the bit you've all been waiting for, my top 10 for the Bahrain Grand Prix, my predictions, and I'm going to throw it out and do something slightly different. Now, I don't know whether I'm willing to put my fantasy team down as this, because I don't know whether it's going to work out like this, but I'm going to put my top 10, well, I'll go with my top 3 first. I'm going to go Max Verstappen to win the Bahrain Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton in second, Valtteri Bottas in third place, and I think Verstappen will probably get the fastest lap as well. That's my top 3. Then after that, I'm going to have Charles Leclerc beating Sebastian Vettel to 4th place. Then we jump down to 6th place. I'm going to go with Pierre Gasly. I think that he will have a solid weekend, but I think once again he'll be asked to play second fiddle to Max Verstappen in the team, which is definitely his role, which is completely understandable. Red Bull want a number 1 and number 2 driver, and they've definitely got that this year, in my opinion. As much as I love Pierre Gasly, of course, it's going to be a tough one for him to quite match Verstappen in terms of points. So that's my top 6. Then the best of the rest positions. I'm going to go with Nico Hülkenberg in P7, P8 Kevin Magnussen, P9 Daniel Ricciardo, and P10 Kimi Raikkonen. But I think it's going to be extremely tight once again. I mean, people that retired last time out, which I think you want to look out for. Carlos Sainz, he's going to be looking for a strong redemption after a tough Australian Grand Prix all round. Landon Norris, I think once again he's going to be a contender for points, and especially now on a track, Bahrain, that he's driven before quite extensively, especially last year in Formula 2 and in F2 testing. He'd have got a lot of experience under his belt, and he'll know what he's doing at Bahrain a little bit more, because Australia is a bit blind, especially for the rookies, or especially 3 rookies for this year. They won't have ever driven really Australia before, except in the simulator. So I'll take a look out for the 2 McLaren drivers. Alex Albon also, he had a tough strategy on Australia, maybe worth looking at him for points. Danny Kvyat as well. I know I'm a fan of him, maybe I'm being a bit biased, but at the same time, he had a strong Australian Grand Prix, and he had consistent pace throughout, and towards the latter stages of the race, I think he was actually faster than a leader at some points, which is kind of funny. But yeah, exciting times for the midfield battles. That's going to be something to watch this year, as always. So that is pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please remember to drop a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you are new. And yeah, be sure to tune in a couple of days' time for another video. I'm looking forward to posting more regular content, but university, as we're always saying on these videos, is a little bit busy. So I do my best. I get these videos out when I can. So thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day. It's been Alex and Matt here. Goodbye.